What's up, fam? It's your boy Demir here, purveyor of all sounds underground. Thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel today, where I'll be discussing the topic of sidechain techniques and or challenges, and I'll get a little bit more into that in a bit. But before I jump into things, what I need from you is that SLC. Hit subscribe, like, comment, and more importantly, hit the notifications bell to stay in tune with the new videos that we have up and coming. So, what do I mean by sidechaining challenges and or techniques? Well, if you have a look at my screen here, you'll know that one of my favorite plugins in the world is this guy, Trackspacer, right here, 2.5. I just love it. Fast attack, fast release. I get the signal from my kick cutting through any sort of deep bass lines that I have to make sure the kick is always distinguished and clear in the mix. However, you also know that I use Native Instruments Maschine here, and I have it pretty much, divvied up right across the board in terms of my template here, pads 1 through to 16, and that represents each instrument. Now, the challenge when it comes to leveraging Trackspacer with Native Instruments Maschine, from a sidechaining perspective, there is no real way to send the signal to Trackspacer. So I'll show you what I mean here. In Trackspacer, what you can send is the audio input, which is easier, so just a straight bounce down of whatever or sample of a kick. You just click on the audio track over here on this side, and then it'll sidechain accordingly. Or you got input, which is not applicable for me because we're using Native Instruments Maschine, and you would think that, oh gee, I should be able to route whatever instrument I have coming from Maschine here into Trackspacer, but it's not so simple, because what Trackspacer requires is a route of either, again, audio input, an instrument, or a bus. So the workarounds that I would typically use up until most recently is I would, either use a sampled kick, or I would just take the kick out of Native Instruments Maschine, drag and drop it into the project, meaning the pattern itself, and then I would solo the pattern and then bounce the kick in place, which is actually what I did on this particular track here. So let's give this kick a listen. It's a pretty dirty kick. So I bounced it out, I processed it, and I bounced it with the processing there. Bouncing in place is a bit of a longer workaround, but it also allows you to get the kick exactly the way you want it. And then because it's pretty much printed to audio, whatever processing effects you put on it, it'll draw a lot less on the CPU as you flesh out the project in terms of song arrangement and completing the song. So that's one advantage. But let's say you wanted to, instead of bouncing out the kick like I have here, and I described that long and detailed process, maybe you really want to have the signal from Native Instruments Maschine go right into Trackspacer. So the best way to do that is set up what I call a ghost send bus. So what I've done here, you could see on pad 5, which is my kick. So instrument 5, okay, kick, pad 5 here. So let's solo it out and listen. So you can see I already got it set up on the sidechain, but let me explain to you what I did to be able to do that. So as per normal, I set up my sound here in Native Instruments Maschine, put maximizer on the kick. I can even load in Native Instruments plugins here, but I opt not to. I'm just leaving it here just to let you know you can actually do that. You can EQ the sound and push it through the signal. So I have this already set up on pad 5 as I've shown you. And then what I do is from here I set up a ghost send, meaning that I have a bus 17 here which has exactly no output. It's just set up to receive a signal, and in this case it is my kick. The reason why I love this piece is because it allows me a lot of control, and I don't have to go through the whole process of the bounce audio in place, you know, the dragging and dropping of the pattern from machine into my project and then bouncing out the audio. I could simply come here and send the signal to bus 17, and it's important to note, when you set this up, it needs to be pre-fader to ensure that the volume fader here is independent of the signal being sent, because it's all about side chaining this marvelous bass line. So let's give this a listen and keep an eye on what's going on here, and I'll show you what the deal is. So let's listen to the bass line. So right now I got my kick from Native Instruments machine being sent from pad 5 over here. Let me just get this out of the way. To bus 17. And then we come over to bus 17 here, which is our ghost bus. And it's receiving the signal and passing that signal to sidechain the bass line. Let's listen to the bass line when we're not sending the signal. So you can hear right off the bat it's quite muddy. You really can't distinguish the kick. I mean, this is not the final kick that I used, obviously from what you heard in the bounce in place. But again, look at all of the control you have here over the signal. And I can turn this down, nothing happens because there's no output. This being the ghost bus send. This is a really powerful technique. And I think I'm definitely going to incorporate it in my templates, because, you know, this is just for, you know, I'm sending this kick signal over here to sidechain the bass line, but I might have, you know, another low bass frequency signal that I want to make sure this kick in Native Instruments machine is sending the signals to sidechain that accordingly, and it's all set up. It's good to go. All I got to do is, well, let's do it here. What is this instrument? I think this is shakers. Yeah, so let's do it here. Load up track spacer, Waves Factory. Now I got that, and I'm going to say, yeah, sidechain on the pad 5. And it's good to go. It's just perfect. And we can control that signal wherever it's happening. I mean, this is very different. This is a shaker, but you get the point. You get a lot of flexibility in being able to leverage this technique and sending a signal directly out of Native Instruments machine, already separated in your workflow through a ghost bus send and sidechain accordingly. I think it's a powerful technique, and it's one I'll continue to deploy in my future productions and templates. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on sidechaining techniques. You can either bounce it in place, do that full workaround for plugins that are similar to Native Instruments machine, or you can leverage a ghost bus send, which I think is much more powerful, and it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of controlling the signal you want to send to the particular instrument you want to sidechain. Let me know your thoughts on this one. I'd appreciate it. I usually join a conversation within 48 hours of posting these videos. I would love to hear what you think about it. Much love and respect to you. Peace.